coming at you live once again, New Style Independent Studios. And this is the time I take to go over current videos, what's happening lately in the wolf driver world, and all that kind of good stuff. If you have any questions, comments, anything at all you'd like to say, shout out, whatever, just put it in the comments section from where you're watching from. We're streaming on a couple different platforms and it comes across differently, but my producer, Rod, will let me know and I'll handle it appropriately accordingly. So, by the way, I'm playing the video, as the title said, from the Chesapeake and Delaware, also known as the C&D. I think it's the Ben Cardin Trail. It goes by a lot of different names, but it's in Chesapeake City, Delaware, and it's the actual canal that has a trail. A lot of these canals, they have trails. Some of them were rail trails, I believe. Some of them were where they used, I guess, the mules to take the ships down the canal. However, they did like the C&O. However, they would coincide with the canal. And now they've made them into trails for pedestrians, hikers, bikers, etc. And this is a really good one. This is fully paved, as you see. And it goes, I think, about 14, 15 miles. I think we did the entirety. It's hard to say sometimes because these trails will meander into other trails. So sometimes you can never tell the distance, and sometimes you can get lost on there and think you're on the trail. It's not like you're using Google Maps. I do use like an All Trails map. All Trails is an app, and it tells you if you get off trail, but it's not as precise sometimes. And I'm not the greatest map reader, so sometimes I really got to work this out logistically in my mind, depending who is my co-pilot and who I have on the scene. Sometimes even my wingman will say, hey, you got to go this way to get on the trail or stay on the trail, etc. So remember, a lot of these trails we haven't been to possibly ever. We haven't been to in years. It's what Wolf Driver on Tour, where I travel different trails all over the East Coast of the USA to run the dogs. So that takes me into one of the main topics I wanted to discuss today, which is the something I developed called Mush CrossFit. And I've been working on this for many years because Huskies in particular, a lot of dogs, the enrichment is the most important thing to their lives, whether it's psychological, physical, hopefully both. So their enrichment is what they get when they go outside and they take different scents and different smells. They're enriching themselves. It's bringing up some of their instinctual traits, etc. The physicality part of it is when they can do, a lot of times, breed-specific exercises. Some dogs love to fetch. Some dogs herd. Some dogs, any dog could like to fetch. But working dogs have work instinctual activities that they do, like herding, like protection, like sled dogs, etc. So when we can hit on that is their physicality and that breed-specific exercise. When we can take them outside to explore and to do the smells, like I'm saying, and to sometimes they have puzzle challenges for dogs. That's working their psychological side. So they both feed into each other. And the most complete exercise, the most complete life for dogs is to get a balance of physical and psychological enrichment. So, for instance, here's a good example. If you put a dog on a treadmill, which is a great way of exercising some dogs. And sometimes that's the only options people have. It might be because of weather. It might be because of living conditions. It might be time constraints, whatever. So that's a really good physical enrichment, physical workout. It's not giving them so much the psychological side because they get into the rhythm just like a human, and there's not many, I'm going to say distractions, but there's not much going on. I mean, if you take a walk on the treadmill versus taking a walk outside, you got a lot going on. You might be run into other dogs. You might run into cars, etc. Hopefully you don't literally run into them, but there's a lot going on to work your mind, to keep you doing what you're doing, but to enjoy and sometimes take notice and sometimes have to navigate through everything that's happening around you. On a treadmill, you don't have to do so much. You just have to focus on walking or running, whatever. But when you get the dog out there, because they're senses are so keen, their smelling sense, they can tell the story by just taking in the smell. So they've got a million things going on in their mind. So you're really enriching them. That's why walking them is so good, because they get that psychological enrichment. When you combine the walk as a physical exercise, a walk, depending on the dog, sometimes might do it, but really getting out there and challenging them, especially some breed-specific exercises like going fast on a bike for some dogs, like pulling for some dogs, etc., becomes a whole complete ecosystem, a whole complete workout for them, appealing to the psychological and physical enrichment. A lot of people don't fully understand that, and that's why I'm trying to explain it this way. So the treadmill can be great, but the getting outside can be a million times better. Again, if you can only do the treadmill, it works. You're obviously going to get your dog outside to walk, hopefully, for in some capacity. So that is giving them some. It doesn't always have to be together, the enrichment part. With dogs like I have, Huskies, which were some of the original sled dogs. I know today we've discussed this. There's a myriad of mixes. There's a mix. The dogs are mixed to get the best specific traits from each dog to make the most complete or best suited sled dog. And but all these dogs, Huskies, a lot of them, they like to pull, they like to run. And when you're outside doing that, they're getting all the enrichment they need, because they're getting to really physically engage the kind of physical activity they need, because it's pretty hardcore. And they're getting to get that psychological enrichment because they're picking up on scents, and they might be tracking a scent down the trail in the direction you're going. So it's really interesting. So what I do, I developed something I call Mush CrossFit. .com. Actually, you can go there and check it out. So I've taken about 6 different aspects of training, mostly on the physical side, but because of most of the time, a lot of these training aspects, and I've got a name for each one of them, are going to be done outside. Some of them definitely can be done inside. But when they're done outside, they're going to get that psychological aspect. And these are, I'm going to call them breed-specific exercises, because almost all of them are about running with some sort of bike, ATV, etc. And when you add in some of the capacities, they can actually pull the vehicle. So I go through different ones. I call, and this one sounds really weird because it's a Swedish name, I believe, fartlek. So it's dog fartlek, I call it. And that's all about speed training. And the explanation on my website talks about how humans do it, but then I give you my dog conversion explanation and how I use it with the dogs. So speed training, kind of like sprint training. And it might be a little harder to do with dogs, especially in the way I'm running them, if I'm going out to take them on what I call one of my adventure mush runs, where we get to the electric dog sled on wheels and we go for a run. The dogs are going to do some sprints naturally inside of our workout, because they're going to pick up on a scent. They're going to see a deer. They're going to know a squirrel's there or whatever. So they're going to want to sprint. When I do my dog fartlek training, I'm going to actually do it where I can hopefully create a lot of speed with them and keep it consistent for the length of the ride. There might be some sprinting aspects to it where they will do a burst of energy, but for the main part of it, I want to go for the whole distance of speed. So I usually will do that on a lower mileage range. So I like to say my speed runs can be anywhere from 2 miles to 8 miles, and that can vary a little bit depending on conditions, always weather, etc., and what vehicle we're using, how they're tethered to the vehicle, etc. But if I can get that speed, get their heart rate up, cardio, then that's what I strive for. With this training, with the speed training, it really helps them develop a different aspect than just running at a moderate pace, but for doing that for distance on the sled, especially on the electric dog sled. So it's pretty interesting doing some of these sports and seeing how the dogs react and how you can custom tailor it to the specific exercise or goal we're trying to achieve. The speed training, again, is more cardio based, and we want the dog to realize some of these dogs, depending on the dog, they come from shelters, or they come from other places where they never really had a chance to exercise or to go to their full potential. So when you can get the dog to really run hard and you get them in shape and you start showing them they can run that speed, you'd be amazed of how the enjoyment, it changes their whole dynamic. It's really incredible. So that's my first one, my speed training aspect. And these are in no particular order, just the way they're coming to me now. So I touched on I call it dog LSD. I told you these got weird names, but it's long, slow distance training. So that's the one where I'll take them, what you see here on the Chesapeake and Delaware Trail, we're doing an LSD train, and it's not LSD. It's long, slow distance training. So I'm trying to keep a slower pace with the dogs, trying to push them for a little more distance. And even though these dogs, a husky, a sled dog, in the right training, the right environment, etc., could go 100 miles a day. So the huskies today, most of the ones we run into, if we're not really training for true dog sledding and mushing sports, we're not going to get that kind of mileage out of them. So, and we're not going to have, a lot of people don't have the whole day to do that kind of mileage. So I'm going on my LSD training, again, long, slow and distance training. I go for anywhere from 10 to 30 miles, usually staying in that 10 to 20 mile range. What that does is it helps the dogs more, definitely in the physical capacity, because some dogs won't pace themselves properly. So they'll tire before you get to your final mile, before your final destination. What happens with those dogs, they should learn to better pace themselves, and that will help them in a myriad of ways without totally wearing out all their energy. Now, dogs, sled dogs in particular, have a quick recovery process. So if the dog will put all their energy out, because they will sprint during these LSD runs, but when they do that, then they slow down and they recover, or you take a break. So, but their recovery process is amazing. If they're true sled dogs, their metabolism helps them recover quickly. And that's how they're able to do these 100-mile runs I'm talking about. Again, we're not doing the 100-mile runs, but I've done 30 miles with my dog, so I know how they pace themselves, etc. A more experienced dog that has done this for a while, they learn about this by isolating and doing the LSD runs. That helps train them for it. It also is more of what I call a touring sport. So they will, you can take a tour, you can take in the sights more, because you know you're going to be out there for a while and you can really absorb yourself. So we've got a question or a comment I'm going to address. My producer just let me know. And this is from Cheryl Kovaduck. Cheryl, always great to see you. Carry on, Cheryl. I don't see too much sprinting with these girls. Well trained with exceptions. Keep these informative measures videos coming. Carry on, Mr. Bill. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate that. Yeah, you know, I'm going to put some in there. It's funny because Lola, actually Inyo has got some more sprinting in her. Lola's not the sprinter, but when you put her in the right element, she sprints, she goes fast, and she gets that smile on her face, and you're like, wow, it's almost like she didn't know she could do it. And I talk about that a lot, how they discover themselves. But yeah, she's a little more challenging to actually get in that sprinting mode. But believe it or not, we did a sprint run about a week and a half ago, and I couldn't believe it. She kept going the whole time. She was sprinting at it. And that's the idea, trying to get them to stay on target for the exercise we're doing. Thanks so much, Cheryl, for the comment. I truly appreciate that. And I think we have another one, Rod. Is that correct? Okay. So Lola is a good one for the LSD training. Now, Lola is a little more of a couch potato. So I know people get huskies. Sometimes they say, my husky's broke. He or she doesn't, lays on the sofa all day. So, and there's some truths to that. Sometimes you just haven't find the right appeal to them, what really appeals to them. So Lola in particular, and I've had some couch potato huskies, when I get her out to the amazing chase, what is the lure coursing activity where they actually chase the flag. It's like they're prey because they're real prey driven. So the flag moves like a toy and it looks like an animal because it's a flag, and it moves through the air real loosely, almost like an animal would do it, a small animal like a squirrel or something. Dogs are usually love to chase. So when Lola sees that, she really goes. Now, she's very smart. So she looks to shortcut. If you don't change the course or you don't change how you're running them on this big, imagine, and I'll post more about this. I've done it forever, but on this big course where there's a string and this flag goes along. So if it just goes round and round, I've had dogs chase it for over 12 miles all day, just chasing this flag. Lola, though, says, oh, it's going this way. I'll shortcut it. I know it's going to get over here. And Lola just wants to she kind of wants to put her mouth on it, but doesn't. Like when she realizes, I don't want to do this. I just want to let it keep going, but I want to catch it. It's pretty interesting, but the way she does it when they start shortcutting, and this is a part of training dogs too, they'll shortcut you, and that's why you keep changing directions. And again, what I mean by shortcutting you is they anticipate the direction you're going to go, and they just take it upon themselves to go that way. But what happens if you change and you go to the left and they think you're going to go to the right because that's what you do every day? Well, then they're like, whoa, what happened? Then they learn they got to keep their attention on you because you're the most important part. You're the alpha. So you're calling the shots. They need to go in the direction you go. That's how you do when you train them for heeling. You walk them next to you, and all of a sudden you change directions the other side. So they feel the nudge on their collar if you change it real quickly, and they were going the other way. So I call it shortcutting. And then the same thing with this is what happens is the dogs anticipate how they're going to run. And when you change it up with all these different activities, you're starting to challenge them. So we've got another question or comment, Rod said. And this is from Keith. Keith, how are you? Great to see you. Mine will lay around the house until I touch a leash. Then it's all over. Off we go for a long time if it is cool. Exactly. Yeah. It's funny because they're usually, what I find, they've usually sown their wild oats. They're happy. They're content. So they'll lay around. But as soon as they know something's about to happen, we say, I'm not going to say the word, but they know what's up. That's what we say. They know SHIT's up. That's what we say. They know it's up because they start going crazy in anticipation that we're going out for a walk. We're going out for a run. We're going out to do something fun. And that's how they get. And that's why when people say, well, the dogs don't, how do you know they like to do this? Well, pull out the harness, pull out the leash, and see what they do. So, yeah, it's true. And when it's cooler outside, they usually have an understanding of what's going on outside, unless we've had a sudden change of temperature, which we get sometimes. But usually when the winter, they know, and they're all amped up. In the summer, sometimes it's a little harder to get them as excited because they know that heat's out there, and they're already worn out from trying to navigate, trying to stay cool from the heat, even though you might have air conditioning. That heat is in the air. So thanks for sharing that, Keith. Really appreciate that. So I've covered the dog speed training, the dog distance training. Now I'm going to do a different one where we call it, believe it or not, it's called rucking or ruck. Dog rucking is what I called it. Again, you can get all these different URLs. I have them set up, dogrucking.com. So the rucking is usually when a human will take a weight vest or a heavy backpack, usually for exercise purposes, to build your core, to build the strength in your body. If you're walking with it, building all the muscles in your legs, your ankle, etc., navigating more weight. Some people have to do it for their job, military. Some people are photographers. They lug around these huge cameras and their tripods and other equipment. With the dogs, it's an interesting concept because you're adding weight to them. So a dog, like a horse, a much bigger animal, you can ride a horse. With a dog, obviously, you can't do that. Little kids shouldn't do that. You're going to hurt their back. But a properly designed weight vest you can put on them and do different activities to build up their muscles so they're basically less injury prone and they're also getting stronger. So we've got another comment or question. I'm going to address that. You missed the opportunity. Oh. So Ducky Tail said, you missed the opportunity to call it a documentary. I like that. That's true. It's a documentary. I like that a lot. Thanks so much for the comment. I appreciate that, Ducky Tails. So, yeah, we do have an actual documentary, and you can go to, I should have said documentary, but you can go to dogdocumentary.com and see our upcoming documentary that we've already completed, and we hope to get it on one of the streaming services in the near future. We had a premiere at one of our local Baltimore theaters, and it was incredible. And my producer here, Rod, he's responsible for it all. He did it all. Followed me around basically for, I don't know, it was in concept for 5 years, for 3-4 years, etc. He was following me around with the camera almost everywhere I went. So you'll get a lot of that, and you'll really get a lot of the insight. But I'm constantly evolving and coming up with different programs, different ways to run the dogs. So I like to be challenged because the Huskies need to be challenged. So I'm constantly reinventing ways to exercise them, to appeal to them, and to share life with them. So I like to share everything I do. So the documentary has a lot in there, and I'm constantly new. We're ready for another documentary soon because this one's been together for about 6 months now, or maybe a little longer. So you got to keep up with me on all venues to know exactly what's going on. We actually, hopefully we're going to do a TV show, or we just made a pilot, and that's got some of the newer stuff in there. So stay tuned. But as I was explaining, is there another one, Rod? No. Okay. As I was explaining, the rucking, dog rucking with the weight vest, really interesting if you think about that. So how humans use it now. I pretty much wouldn't ask my dogs to do anything I haven't experienced because, I don't know, I'm just a adventurous guy and I've done so much. And I'm always interested in how, I guess, things apply to different. That's why I'm always interested to see how the dogs do it, because I know what most of these things are on the human side. So I want to, I've worn weight vests for many years. I did a lot of martial arts training, and I have one now I just love. I'm not as physical as I am now. I need to get back into it because I've been doing so much with the dogs. I've devoted so much of my time that I don't have, it sounds really bad, but I don't have enough time to keep myself in shape. I hope to get back to it soon. Actually, I got a bad knee now because I haven't done as much physical exercise as I should. So I hope to be back at that soon. But the weight vest was really beneficial to me. So I've been researching, using them, and studying them for many years with the dogs. So what I've come up with, if you use a properly fitted weight vest, you can add a whole new dynamic to what the dogs do and challenge them in other ways. Now, you want to be really knowledgeable. I don't really mean to say careful, but you want to learn, you want to know what you're doing, and you don't want to err on the side of doing too much and then finding out. You want to proceed cautiously, because if you put too much weight in there, the dogs can really injure themselves. They have more of a chance of injuring themselves. But if you start really low and build up, but you don't build up to it's too much weight, you build up, you plateau at what is recommended usually for the particular activity you're doing. And also, always, whatever I say, consult with your veterinarian. There are professional physical trainer veterinarians, and I'm saying that wrong. I don't know what they're actually called. I just know because I actually have worked with one at my veterinarian office, especially with my aging last generation of dogs as they age, doing a water treadmill with them and learning. But when I talk to the veterinarian, she's so knowledgeable about the stuff I'm doing, because not necessarily the way I do it, but when we talk how the dogs respond, it was very interesting, to say the least. But there are professional veterinarians out there that will specialize not in all the sports that I'm mentioning here, but different aspects of it, so you can get a better idea, know what to expect, and get advised from a medical professional in the dog veterinarian world. So with the weight vest, I find I do a lot of that on the treadmill, because the treadmill, I can control all the conditions, from the temperature in the room because it's indoors, to the surface of the treadmill, to the incline. If I'm going to incline it at all, I can control everything, and it stays very consistent because that's what the treadmill does. When you take them outside and you're doing some of that psychological enrichment with your physical workout, their physical workout, it's a little different because the road, the trail, whatever might be, have little hills. It might have divots, might have, from weather, water on there, snow on there, etc. So a lot of these things have to be taken into consideration. But the dog rucking can really help the dog stay less injury prone, because you're strengthening a lot of the joints that they're going to be using. So the dog, my experience and what I know, can get an injury twisting bad, doing something real sudden, even from playing with another dog. It doesn't have to be doing any of these activities for whatever reason. But if we can strengthen those key joints and areas, they could use any part of the body at any time. But by putting a weight vest on, you're pretty much getting the whole body, depending on the activity you're doing. As they strengthen that, if they tweak something when they're playing with another dog or playing with their brother or sister, or even you, they might avoid an injury because that muscle, they tweaked it, but it's already strengthened so it can handle it. So I think the weight vest, so we'll do less mileage on the weight vest, the dog rucking training. Again, anywhere from 2 to 8 miles usually is a range I like to stay at, depending on the challenge, depending on the weight we're doing. So when you increase weight, you want to keep the activity lower impact. So when you decrease weight, then you can do a higher impact activity, which the electric dog sled on wheels would be considered that, because they're going to sprint at some point with the weight vest on them. And if you're giving them too heavy of a weight vest when they do that, that could be too much when they're coming up and down, when they're trotting. That could be too much depending on the surface, etc. So we want to keep that all in mind. There's a lot of aspects that go into this. And my producer just let me know we have another question. So, Jesus Del Poza 87, keep the good job, man. They love that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the, all the likes and all the love, basically. I really do appreciate that. I love it because I'm enjoying helping others see things maybe from a different aspect and educating about the breed and what they need. So I really appreciate that. The dogs really love it. I mean, that's the whole proof of the pudding. If you see the dogs when they're running, when they're doing what we do, they're just so happy. So it's not like a human where I throw my weight vest on. I'm like, oh gosh, I got to get out there and do this. But when you put it on the dogs, they're like, okay, what's next, Dad? Let's go. It doesn't faze them. But you can see in their performance how the weight vest is affecting them. And when it's affecting them well, when it's working out, you're not going to see too much difference in their movement, but you're going to see a difference in their speed. So I guess that is movement. But you don't want to see where they're starting to have to adjust their body too much for the weight. You want it to be light enough that it doesn't affect their stride or their gait or how they're performing, except for moving slower. That's usually an indication that it's working the way it should be, depending on when they get slower, like as they go with further mileage. It all takes a lot of mind work to realize it. If you go slow and do this cautiously, you'll get feedback from the dogs on a gradual level, and that means they're developing, and you have to evaluate how they're doing. So we've got a question here, a comment. Hey, man, is this recorded? So Murky Varma says, hey, man, is this recorded? Not recorded. We are live, and I'm giving you a shout out. Thanks for asking, though. Obviously, we don't set these live broadcasts. Unfortunately, we haven't notified everybody because sometimes we change times. We're usually here Tuesday mornings, 11 to maybe even noon. So we're live then. And if you're watching this now, you know that because I just mentioned you. We are live. And if you're watching this after the rebroadcast of it, because Facebook actually and other social media outlets are not keeping them on as long, I think it's 30 days now, and then they're getting rid of live videos. But if you comment or you have any questions, concerns, whatever, I'll get to it even if I'm just responding back by the keyboard. But for now, we're live. So thanks for asking. I appreciate that. The weight, the rucking. So I'm just going to mention that I've noticed, and I'm not sure if it's the actual rucking. I think it is. Again, weight vest training, dogrucking.com. Lola in particular, so we did some rucking last week, and I do it here and there. I'm trying to get on a more consistent schedule now. This week we went yesterday on a run to the Western Maryland Rail Trail, and she was fantastic. She was like, I never saw so much energy from her. So I'm like, is it the dog rucking? Again, just one time, but sometimes it can affect their mind too. And they're like, I got this vest on me, I'm working with it. And the next time they don't, they're like in gear, like the mind took over and said, we don't have this, we can go faster. It's pretty interesting. Again, it's all that dynamic. I love it. Another question or comment here. And this is from Murky Varma again. So Murky says, dogs love going places. They love you so much they're willing to sacrifice anything to be with you, even their interest in going places. So they do. I mean, depending on the dog, because the Husky is just so independent. Thank you for that comment, by the way. The Husky is just so independent. So it's not your typical dog in the sense that they'll leave you. I mean, sometimes they'll just wander off, and if they never see you again, that might not have been their that might not have been their intention, but they leave. They just go, and they can be lured away from you. So other dogs are very much like Velcro. They'll be with you every second, every day. They don't want to leave you. They don't care what you're doing. So that is true in that capacity. But and they will. And people do say sometimes, well, they're just doing it because you want them to do it. So and in some ways, that's true. You can train the dogs in certain ways. But when you start getting into the real physical regiment of a lot of what these working breeds do, and you start doing the particular instinctual specific exercises and activities, you can really bring out that drive in them and see how they respond. And it's going to take a dog that wants to do it to really do it, basically. So some of the dogs will, and what I mean by that, they'll stick with you for a little while, and then, this is getting hard. They don't want to do it for whatever reason. And it's usually not because it's getting hard. It's usually because they're getting bored. And then you can see the different personality traits and what's going on with them. And that's where the dog trainer really becomes the force. And can teach you, the proper dog trainer, how to keep your dog motivated to do certain things, because we all need exercise, and dogs are no different. Our dogs today, a lot of them get obese because, not that we all don't have good intentions, all of us dog owners, but sometimes we can't find the right appeal to them. What's going to get them to engage more, to do more, so they get a really, really physical workout, something they need to maintain their weight, maintain their heart, maintain their health. And that's one of the reasons I share everything I do to help people figure it out. And the Husky, because they're so intelligent and so independent, people say like wolves, they are the hardest to get through to sometimes. So it takes a study. And that's why I love the dynamic of the Husky, and that's why I'm developing all this. So I touched on the dog rucking just before we're done here. We're about 35 minutes into usually what is about 50 minutes or an hour. So if you're watching me, you know what you're up for, and you know maybe when to ask your question or comment. But the other part of my training besides the dog rucking, so I've touched on 4. I've talked on the speed training, the long, slow distance training, the dog rucking, and now I'm going to touch on the 4th one, which is resistance. So resistance is pretty funny. A lot of people, even mushers, maybe, and I shouldn't speak for them. I'm not a professional musher, but a lot of times from the comments I get from professional mushers, I see that they're not understanding the resistance training. So resistance training with dogs isn't really a dog sledding thing. It's not sled dogs. It was at least the best system that I've seen was developed by people or a group or a guy, it might have been, that has hunting dogs, that they developed this for conditioning them. And it's actually called dog roading. So dog roading is where they have a specialized harness, and a lot of people hate this harness. They're like, oh my gosh, that's like a parade harness. So it's nothing like that. It's because it comes across their chest. If it's not fitted well, or your hookups aren't right, people think it can possibly maybe ride up their throat, put too much pressure on that. I haven't seen that happen. Or maybe it can go too low down and restrict their paws. I haven't seen any evidence of that as long as I've been doing it. If it's fitted properly and the sport is right with what you're doing, it comes across pretty much the center of their chest and just keeps them back. It resists them. They get their workout by pushing against this resistance. Usually this is designed for vehicles that they can't actually push. They can't actually pull, basically. I call it push because it's really pushing. They can't propel. And usually like ATVs. So of course, sled dogs, they can move an ATV. They can pull an ATV if you have a big enough team. This is a smaller team, and they're not able to propel the ATV. So with the rig that I use, which is called a spider rig, they're fitted in this dog roading harness, and they're pretty much pushing against it. Now, dogs that don't want to participate, even some of my dogs, they just kind of walk with it. I never go faster than my slowest dog. So whatever dog that day, sometimes it might be one in particular, but sometimes that changes depending on seasoning, how they're feeling, weather, etc. Then that dog, we keep at that pace, and the dogs that want to go more, they push against the roading harness and they get resistance. That resistance works them in a different way than the other the other dog sports that I've talked about. So it's pretty cool, basically. And when you keep in mind that I developed the electric dog sled on wheels to work with a multitude of harnesses, but especially the dog roading harness, so they can actually get the harness on. And it wasn't developed for this, but it works perfectly. They can use this dog roading harness, and because they can move the vehicle, the 4 dogs that I have with me in it, they're actually pushing to mush, push to mush. So they're getting that resistance training as they push the vehicle. And because they can control the speed, relatively speaking, I have brakes and I have a motor. They don't have to propel it. But with that in mind, they will pick up the pace more readily when they see something that attracts them versus the ATV. They start to pick up the pace, but they realize they're not going to move the ATV. I'm controlling the pace. I have to because they can't move or propel that vehicle, if that makes sense. So that's called dogroading.com, dogresistance.com. They're both my websites. They'll tell you more about it. Really an interesting aspect on training. Now, keep in mind, all of this, whatever I do with the dogs, in some way is spring-loaded. So they're getting a little resistance anyway, no matter what harness they're using. And that's important to curb against injuries and to also be more comfortable for the dogs. So there's usually springs involved or rubber involved that can create elasticity to keep the dogs basically spring-loaded, to keep everything gradual, or as gradual as can be. So if they stop to go to the bathroom on any of my equipment, it's a sudden stop usually. All dogs don't stop to go to the bathroom, sled dogs. They'll actually, some of them will go on the run. But if a dog will stop, it'll jerk the vehicle, but that'll be more gradual to them through the elasticity I'm talking about. Dog roading, because it's, again, about resistance, it's important to put that elasticity. On some of the harness I use, they actually have a rubber gasket, if you will, or rubber ring that helps the resistance real close to their body, as well as what they're tethered to are spring-loaded or in some ways designed to give more spring elasticity, which helps with the resistance too. So we got another question or comment. My producer has told me. So Keith, hey Keith, thanks again for the second comment. I always appreciate them. Young girls are in great shape, and I was surprised by how much they have the body shape of my male, but yours are woolly. My female is 75 pounds and very woolly. Thank you so much. Yes, it's important. You can tell usually what shape they're in by their body. Now, when you get into the woolly aspect. Woolly means they've got long hair. That means usually double-coated long hair. Huskies are all double-coated. When you talk woolly, they're long hair. So sometimes it hides their body shape. So with a dog, you want them to have the curves, if you will, to know that they're defined. When they look flat, they're probably overweight when there's a straight line. But the fur could be covering that up. So it's always good to check how much you can feel the ribs, the tailbones, or the backbones. I think they're called the tailbones, and their spine. So a veterinarian can help you better determine the best weight for them. So sometimes I've had dogs I can't put any weight on. They're just so active. And then sometimes you've got to customize your diet for that, etc. But my dogs are hardworking. So I know, Keith, you mentioned with Lola, the black and white one. You saw her with Sean in I just read your comment earlier. So she's the biggest girl I got, and she's big boned. So she's got some weight to her, but that fluff is big. So she's probably about 62 pounds. I'd like to knock a couple pounds off her, actually. She's the most couch potato, all the stuff we do. And the diet she has, which I've designed for her, I would think she still is a few pounds overweight. My vet agrees with that. Whereas when you go to Nikita's more of a perfect weight for her size. She's not thin, but certainly next to Lola. Now, she's kind of more of a between a smooth coat. She's more of a plush coat, mid between the woolly and the smooth coat husky. So she doesn't have that fluff to throw you off. But then when you get to Inyo, the black dog, now these dogs are all similar height-wise. When you get to Inyo might be a little taller than Nikita. I think Lola is too, just marginally. You might see it when they're next to each other. Inyo has had a few different surgeries has had a major surgery, I should say. Not with me before I got her. She got a PIO, which is something where they take the uterus out. So she almost passed away from it. She was in very dire straits, basically, and she was able to get the surgery she needed. This is before I got her. But when I got her, she was in a recovery state. She was like 37 pounds. And they said to me, please try to put weight on her. She needs it. And of course, I took her to my vet, got her checked out. She looked good. But I got her because I go and I feed them. I got her up to 50-some pounds. And she started to look a little stocky, kind of like a husky, but it was a little too much. She's got more of a petite frame, even though, again, that black fur, that thick, she's a woolly. And you can't really tell under that fur. You got to really feel her. And sometimes I need the veterinarian to help feel her because it can be close. She's back down to 44 pounds. She could probably use a pound or two. Now, some veterinarians would consider that racing weight. Some people would consider her really thin build. I mean, her ribs are out there, racing weight. It's just that she works really hard when she's out there doing what we do. And so I've increased her diet a little bit, put a little more weight on her. Because I think, and the veterinarian, depending on which veterinarian I go, so I've got more of a sport veterinarian that will be like, no, she's perfect. My other veterinarian will be like, she could use a pound or two. Usually that's like a little fuller than the veterinarians that are looking for that racing weight. But I did have a husky that he could not gain weight ever. And it never really affected him. It wasn't a medical condition. It was just his metabolism and how active he was. So, it worked out great for him. He's a little tall for the breed, so he was really tall. That was Chase. He was all white with brown eyes, and it was interesting to work with diet in him. And he was a good boy, just different. They're all different in so many ways, and that's why it's important to pay attention to all the activities I'm talking about and how we feed them, and let them get monitored by the vet. I have a veterinarian scale, so I weigh them when I try to do it more on a consistent basis, but I always don't manage to. But it's always good to talk to the veterinarian because you see the dog every day, and if you're getting the readout on the scale, that does help. But when you take them for a checkup, whether it's every 6 months, every year, the veterinarian sees them so few times, they can give you feedback of what they're seeing, which isn't going to be your feedback, which every day when you're gradually losing or gaining weight, you might not be able to see it as much, especially with these woolly huskies, woolly dogs that are more gradual, but and hidden by that fur. So that's why veterinarian scale, it can be really helpful. I didn't touch on Cyan. Cyan is the gray wolf one I have, and she just maintains her weight perfectly. She's just typical husky build, not really too thin, not really too big, and she's pretty much perfect. That's the way her metabolism works, and she responds to our activities and the amount of food I'm giving her, etc. So I want to make sure we get to all the topics. So I touched on speed. I've touched on weight vest training. I've touched on long, slow distance. And I've touched on the last one. It'll come to me. The last one was the resistance training, the dog roading. So I've got two more. So the fifth one is I'm going to go to, let me think for a sec. Might have to go to my website here real quick, just because. And again, I invite you to go there, but I want to get this right. It's mushcrossfit.com again. And right on the front page, you'll see. So I did not touch on, dog arc training, ARC. So that's about climbing. And a lot of times it's more about, for the human side, maybe mountain climbing, maybe rock climbing, etc. But it can also be, at least my understanding, and this is the way I do it for the dogs, I call it dog ARC training, where they're actually climbing mountains, climbing hills, climbing inclines, essentially. So that's not something a lot of people focus on. But what I've found, and I've done this for many years, a whole new dynamic. So the dogs, they've got 4 legs, so they can navigate better than a human for the most part, and handling at least different terrain, different inclines, or going uphill, going downhill. So when we do this dog arc training, I'll go to the mountains and I'll just go up mountain roads using my dog motorsports equipment. You've seen it before, maybe the Easy Raider military scooter, the Swin car, these vehicles that can make it up the hills, because some of these hills, these inclines, could be in excess of 20%. I mean, they're massive. So if you don't know anything, I'm saying the grade is 20%. That's a big climb. I couldn't walk it in my shape now. I'm sure there's people out there that could. Some people can bike it. But the dogs can traverse it, at least dogs as they get into shape. So depending on how much the dog's in shape, how they can traverse it, how they can climb it, will depend on maybe speeds you can go. Usually on the other side of that mountain or that hill, you're going downhill. So the dog has to learn to navigate that too. And if they're on a vehicle, some of my vehicles have what they call regenerative braking. So they're automatically which means that it recharges a battery. It's getting the energy from when you're freewheeling, when you're going down a hill, when you don't need to propel it. So it'll naturally slow itself down, essentially. So when we go down the hill, that helps because you can go so fast, depending on the incline, that it's even too fast for the dogs, and they start trying to brake using their stopper pads, and they can hurt themselves doing that too. So the dog arc training is not only about going uphill, but it's about going downhill too, and how the dogs get into condition and get the understanding of doing that really becomes interesting. I started a series I call mushquest.com. And the Mush Quest started off with me going to the tallest inclines or the steepest inclines that people could bike. So it meant some of them are roads, but at least you could bike this road, and maybe has room for you, or it's a quiet road, they have a bike lane, whatever. And I said, you know what? If people can do it, the dogs can definitely do it, especially my dogs are in shape. I got to have the right equipment to make it up the hill, but these are usually in mountainous or hilly areas. So we did a few. So there's a place out there that ranks these bicycle climbs, which they call I forget how their terminology is, but they say the largest climbs on a state by state basis. So I went to Maryland's largest hill climb. I think I went to Pennsylvania's, and I did them with the dogs. I'm going to work on doing all of them. That's just a bucket list thing with the dogs, but the dogs did it like it was no problem. It didn't matter. I've gone on, a lot of these are only a mile to 3 miles. I've gone on like 10, 15 miles of hill climbing, mountain climbing. So the dogs are like, what's this? Even though it might be a little steeper. than some of the places we've gone. I've gone to so many places that are kind of off the grid. So I've gone to steeper places than a lot of these claim are the steepest place. I don't know, just the way it is. That's the way Wolf Driver rolls. So my producer let me know we've got another question or comment here. So this is hard to read. Okay. So from One Piece Art Showcase, does this hurt the dogs? Excellent question. So from One Piece Art Show, I think it is, they asked me, does this hurt the dogs? And that is one of the most common questions, but it's really important to address this. So almost everything I do and almost everything a lot of mushers do, I'm not really a professional musher at all, but when you get to know a professional musher, it's almost all about the dogs, and their comfort and their health is the most important thing to almost everybody doing this. There are some bad seeds. There's bad seeds, bad people in everything. And people that run sled dogs get a really bad rap because of it, but it's nothing like that. What I'm doing is a million miles away from that. So because I have a small team and because I've developed all these different ways of running the dogs, which I call dog moto sports, mush CrossFit, etc., and adventuring with the dogs, this is all about the dogs being really pets and companions to me, as well as a form of sled dogs. So it's kind of like the best of all worlds here. These dogs, it brings me back to a video, and I need to get this video of somebody showing dogs just doing, it wasn't sled dogs, it was another breed, just running at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And someone said, do you think you could have these dogs as pets? I mean, sled dogs are so intense. Working breeds are usually so intense that a lot of the exercise they need, the human mind can't even fathom. So if you look at, you're below zero temperatures and you're riding around, and you see a deer outside, and you're like, is it healthy for the deer? How does the deer weather that? You can't understand it. You're like, isn't it cold? But these animals were developed. They evolved with this way of keeping warm. And I'm not saying dogs are like this, but they are like this for certain activities, that they have all the tools needed to do a lot of the instinctual exercise and what we do, what people do with them. So when done properly, it doesn't hurt the dog at all. It's what they need to do to really have a complete full life. So a lot of these people get dogs especially huskies, because they're so beautiful, they're so striking, their looks. But after that wears off, a little while after they turn into dogs, they get them as puppies, a lot of people, they can't control them and they don't know how. And they think, oh my gosh, I can't put it on the bicycle. It might hurt the dog. But if done properly, it's what the dog needs, because otherwise these dogs become unmanageable, a lot of them, and they wind up abandoned or in shelters. So it definitely does not. My dogs have gotten longevity, and they've gotten longer lives, I believe, and at least veterinarian certified. They've staved off age-debilitating diseases like arthritis till much later in life than you could imagine, because of what we do. So we've got another question or comment here.
Comments. This guy was trying to also respond to the person that was asking if this hurts the dog. So here are the two comments. You can go ahead and read it.
Okay, so these are responses to somebody asking if it hurt the dogs. So from Dee Dan Callahan, I believe it is. This is great. And he responds, this is great for their physical and mental health. They need the stimulation, and huskies especially need the exercise. Exactly. And I couldn't have said that better. Everything I was trying to say, you just summed it up into the perfect phrase there. So that's what it is. And when they don't get this stimulation, physical and psychological. Remember, psychological, they go outside, they get the smells, and they're chasing that scent down the trail. When they don't get to do this breed-specific exercise, they become unmanageable, and their fate often becomes terrible. So that's why if you go to a shelter, a lot of them have so many huskies, because people get them and they just don't know how to do this. And that's why I'm sharing all this, to help people determine, is this the right breed for me? Or the people that have them, oh, I can do this with them. This is healthy. This won't hurt them. if done properly. So I think we have another one, Rod said. So Dan Callahan again. Thank you, Dan. If you follow this guy, he basically has a Cadillac of dog setups. It's a power cart which breaks so the dogs are just pulling themselves along at an easy pace and he can control the speed. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I appreciate you mentioning that and following me. So it is the Cadillac. And that's what I was saying. Like a professional musher, if you go and see them on social media, the Iditarod was just happened a few weeks ago. You'll see it's extremely demanding, and it's a lifestyle. And mine is a lifestyle too, but kind of a retired lifestyle, a luxurious lifestyle. My dogs are living a luxurious life. When you get into what these dogs are really built for, like the Iditarod, like these mushing expeditions, etc., then you realize these dogs are in the lap of luxury. And that's what I am. I don't want to do I couldn't handle it at this point in my life to do any of these big mushing expedition races, etc. So that's why I'm sharing this with my dogs and doing mushing light, for lack of a better description. And we're adventuring on top of it. So don't get me wrong, the dogs love to run anywhere. But when I'm trying to change a location every week or 3 times a week with what I'm doing now. So that means we might travel to as far north as Massachusetts and do the Cape Cod Rail Trail. The next week, we might travel to Tennessee or the border of Tennessee and do the Virginia Creeper Trail. So my dogs are seeing different animals or picking up on scents that are indigenous to that area. They're seeing so many different sights and sounds and scents they're smelling that it's total mind entertainment. So thanks again. I didn't say it as clearly as I like. You said it better. I appreciate that. So we've got another one from Dan. Dan again. I have 3, and people don't understand this. You hit the nail on the head about them ending up in shelters. That's how I got my second, unfortunately. So true. Thanks again. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's exactly, and I've seen it happen so much. So I'm on a lot of different groups on social media. I try to advise and chime in when I can because people don't understand this. And they're like, my dog's going to the bathroom. Huskies usually related. That's what I deal with. My dog's going to the bathroom all over the house. My dog, sometimes it's medical related. True. I understand that. My dog's escaping my yard. My dog won't get into a crate, won't do this, that, and the other. And a lot of times it's because they're starved for psychological and physical enrichment. So people say, I take my husky for a walk 5 times a day. We do 5 miles. The walk isn't the same as when you can put them on something. And it doesn't have to be on a bike. It can be in a huge yard that's fenced in properly that they can just run to really get some exercise. I mean, I know everyone doesn't have access to everything I'm doing and different possibilities out there. But again, when they can just get some of this enrichment, they become different dogs. The dynamic totally changes. So my producer let me know. We've got another comment here. And this is from Keith. Huskies require a lot of work and care. They need an alpha leader. Exercise, need time to be around them as they are pack oriented. Your house is fluff and talking all the time. I appreciate talking at that all the time. Thanks so much again, Keith. Exactly. They do. There's been people that say, oh, well, you don't really need to be an alpha. Well, you can look on that as you want. You can get into semantics here, but you definitely, they look to the person or to the dog that's going to keep them safe and give them what they need. And that's how good training starts. And that's how this that's how their hierarchy works really in a wolf pack and then becomes a dog pack. But their ancestors, a wolf, is where it came from. So thanks, Keith. Thanks, everybody, for sharing that. So we're going to go a little late because I got to touch on these topics. I want to make sure I complete the show here. So I explained to you about the dog arc training, what I call dog arc training. So the last one. So we've covered speed training, distance training, resistance training, weight vest training, climbing training, and one more, which I call dog spatial, space awareness training. And space awareness training is usually not something, depending on the dog, that you're going to just set out to do unless as the dog gets older, they need to get their eye coordination, their vision might be affecting them, their mobility might be affecting them. So you might need to go over some spatial awareness. Spatial awareness is basically getting the dog to naturally, dogs are really spatially aware. They know you can put them in a tight spot and they can get through it without touching their hair on anything. That's how spatial aware they are. Now, depending on how they're going to use that, depending on their personality, their exposure, etc., and what they're doing, what the activity is, depends on how they're going to perform, basically. And what I mean by that is, so the dog's really spatially aware. When you put them on the electric dog sled on wheels, by the way, I'm stopped here on the video. I know I haven't paid this much attention, but we are still on the C&D Chesapeake and Delaware Trail. But the dog can be the most spatially aware as they are, and then you hook them to a bike and you go through a narrow bridge. Well, they're caught between the bike wheel or the particular equipment that they're on and the rail of the trail. They might have a reservation against doing that. So I call that spatial training, spatial awareness training, as we have to get them through their hurdle, whatever, no pun intended there, whatever it may be, whether it's just psychological, it's almost always psychological, that they're not going to fit through it, that the bike's going to attack them in some way, they're going to hit it, etc. So it could be really interesting, and I'm always fascinated by it. And you can go on my dogspatial.com and see, we've gone through some of the tightest spots that I wasn't sure we'd get through. Of course, I'm not going to subject my dogs to any possibility of something. I go so slow, and I want to see how they're responding and how they're navigating it. So if I need to take a different course, take the dog off, work with my co-pilot to get the dog out of the situation, or to address it later training. Maybe the dog's a little apprehensive, but it's working through it. I might need to do some other spatial awareness training at home or set up some areas on the trail that I know are tight and take them through there a couple times. But you'll see one of my favorite explanations of this dog spatial awareness training or examples is when we were on the C&O Canal, actually, in Maryland. We got to an area where they had to make a makeshift bridge, what I'm calling a makeshift bridge, because it was washed out or eroded the trail. So they went across the probably a tributary of the Potomac River. It wasn't very big. I'm going to call it about 24, 25 feet. And they made a bridge which was for bike riders and walkers, not dog sleds on wheels. So we measured it. And the dogs would be okay with me on the bike and just making it over by basically inches on each side. There wasn't a lot of room for error. So I almost always, especially attempting something like this, and this just came about. I didn't know I was going to face this on the trail. It was just recently happened. This is a few years back. Actually, some of my older generations of dogs were on this. So we go through this tight area. The problem is there's no barrier. You would go right into this little stream. Now, nobody is going to perish from this, but it could get messy. The dogs could wind up going, I don't know, I don't think they might go into the water. It's only knee high or paw high. It's not going to affect them. But if dogs on both sides step off, that would be a real problem. Their harness would hold them. I've had situations where doing my dog roading, it's so spring loaded. We got to a really unlevel area, and the dogs actually were held up by the harness. They came up just a little bit off the ground. It was crazy. But anything that happens, I've built all these safety precautions in everything I do. But this bridge was like nothing I've seen, and the dogs performed like I never could believe. I mean, it was amazing. So it didn't affect them. They were just like, whatever. So other times we've gone to bridges that I'm going to call this being spatial awareness, even though there's no way we could have hurt ourselves. When the dogs can see below them, they usually get freaked. So we were on a bridge in the Pittsburgh area on the Great Allegheny Passage, and the bridge had a dedicated biking lane. And had chain link fence that curved over us. There's no way we could have fallen out, but the dogs could see the water below us, and the dogs wouldn't go. They shut down. So I had to have my co-pilot. We had to walk each one separately over the bridge. I think I even had to pick one or two of them up. So that's the disparity there of what the training can provide, dog spatial awareness. And there's other aspects, like I mentioned, when they get older, using cones and using other obstacles because their mobility may be suffering from age-related disease. Their eyesight could be suffering some. So you might be able to work with them to increase their quality of life using dog spatial awareness training. I call it dogspatial.com. So that's everything. I'm going to address another question here. So Dan Callahan again, what is being sprayed around the pups in the video above? So great question. And I did not address that. So when we're on the trails a lot of times and it's remotely warm, I mean, anything above zero is warm for a husky, even below zero. But when we go on paved or smooth asphalt trails, concrete, etc., even though it's cooler outside, their pads is where they sweat from, where they emit heat from. So when their pad is rubbing on not rubbing, just going along, rubbing's the wrong word, getting traction when they're moving along, they're creating friction. So I guess you could say rubbing, not to the point where we don't let it get to the point where it's going to affect their pad and injure it, but to the point where it creates heat. So when we stop, depending on the circumstances, we'll take water from a mister or a misting system that just I got at Home Depot. It's like a sprayer, and it'll come out real fine mist. It'll make a puddle. We try to make a puddle in a tray or even on the concrete so they could submerge their pads. When they can submerge their pads is one of the most effective ways of cooling them. So I'm just spraying water on them to help them cool efficiently and effectively. So when you get into too hot of a surface, it might not feel hot out to you, but with the friction going on and with the sun hitting the surface like concrete, especially blacktop, because it's attracting the sun, temperatures heat up real quick. So we have to be real careful as the spring moves on, as the sun gets stronger, and as we get further into the warmer season. So I won't run them at all if it's remotely warm on a blacktop surface or on a concrete surface. I do carry a laser thermometer that will instantly tell me the temperature of the surface. And I carry it year round, and I've said this before, you might not have heard it. So we got to an area, they're paving a road, and I had to cross the road. The trail wasn't even asphalt. It was just a gravel trail. And I'm crossing the road. I'm looking, they're paving it. I'm like, whoa, we can't even go there. But they were further down the road. They'd already paved this area. And they're like, you can go. And I'm like, no. I need to check the temperature of this asphalt before I go. It wasn't sunny out. It was cold. So I took my thermometer and I checked, and it was safe for the dogs to go. And I always feel it with my hands. I always carry booties, and I also carry Musher's wax, which is a wax you can coat their pads with. If we do get to a situation where there's no other choice but to run on a surface that might be warm, that might be in some way a hazard to the dogs. Again, if it's a long trail, I'm just not going to go there. If it's remotely warm, that has a hard surface. So hope that makes sense. But we are using water, and we're puddling around the dogs. Now, one last thing I do want to say is if it's low humidity out, I will spray the dogs also on their hair, on their body. It's questionable, does it help them keep cool? I believe it acts like sweat for a human. So as it evaporates, it helps pull some of the heat from the dog. But keep in mind, they're so well insulated, I don't know if their heat is actually, the hair helps them ventilate as it is, but I don't know how much that heat is transferring out their body. So I know if it's too humid and you spray them, then it becomes, or they get wet, even, if they go swimming, it can act as a mat and actually help keep the heat in them. What you want is to have them properly groomed, and they're in the warmer temperatures, their undercoat has been shed, and they have the hair to help cool them. The breeze can go through them. Their hair is protecting them. You never want to shave them. But I believe, again, taking the misting wand and going lightly, getting their, I love to see their coat have drops of water all over it. Then that can help them emit some more heat, but never when it's humid out. So hope that answers your question. The long-winded answer. So we're going to take another one. We're going to keep going. Cheryl Gilchrist. Hey, hi, good afternoon. So Cheryl has been with me forever, basically. So been a fan, Wolf Driver fan, and I really appreciate it. Cheryl was actually, it wasn't on my first generation Husky. She was on the second generation with Princess and Zorro and Chase and Jag, and we did some of our first live broadcasts. I'm going back, I'm going to say maybe 15 years ago when Facebook first started it, and we were going out at night a lot then. It was summertime. I will go out at night when it's too warm during the day just to get rid of the heat of the sun and to get on these trails. Then I don't have to so much. Sometimes the asphalt will hold depending on if you're running some of that heat, so you still have to be careful even if the sun isn't out. But usually it cools down to be manageable. Spraying the pads helps then too. I wasn't doing that back then. But Cheryl was with us when we were doing ghost hunting and we were running the dogs at night, and it was so cool. It's harder to do now, just the way I'm doing it and the way social media is. But we were actually broadcasting right from the dog sled, and Cheryl was like, we were saying, "Hey, what's going on?" And she could ask direct questions, and my co-pilot had the phone that was doing the broadcast, so he'd be like, "Cheryl, just ask, what's the current temperature out?" And we were able to address that right there from the middle of the mountains if we had any kind of cell phone signal. It was really incredible. So Cheryl, how are you? I hope all is well. You've known many of my dogs. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks for all your loyalty, all your being a Wolf Driver fan. So we've got another one here from Cheryl. Are any of the other dogs still around? No, unfortunately. So we've lost the last of that generation 2 summers ago. This will be the second summer. This will be the third summer. That was Chase, and they were around for a while, and it's so hard sometimes to deal with a loss. It's always hard to deal with the loss of an animal, of anybody. But our furry family, wow, it hits hard. If dogs have any fault, that's it. They don't live long like humans, or long as a human. So almost always we're going to have to deal with this, losing a pet. It really is hard. But they all lived really good lives, as you saw. So I always take comfort in knowing we just had great lives together. We shared so many special memories and times. And my man cave, where I go, I've got a bunch of TV screens with all of the adventures we did, even the ones you were watching back in the day. Everything that the dogs were involved with, even when we were ghost hunting with them, when we were running all the trails, and almost all the activities on there. And actually, unfortunately, some of my, like one of my co-pilots, Red, I don't know if you remember him, but he's passed away, and he was young. He was 20 years younger than me, I think. So when I see these, it's hard not to tear up, but the warmth comes from my heart into just seeing it again and bringing that memory so much close to reliving it in my mind, and just feeling the love for the dogs and all those special times. Got another one here. We're going to keep going here from Cheryl. Wasn't it Chase that kept always chewing his harness? That is so funny you remember it. So, dogs are funny with harnesses. Some dogs, they don't care. You put them on them. Even booties sometimes. Most dogs are a little more responsive to booties. But usually the harness, they don't care as much. Sometimes they start caring more when they feel pressure on them, a young dog, when they feel like the harness is engaging. But Chase, in particular, would always chew his harness. I couldn't figure it out if it was the buckle and I tried different harnesses. I could never get him to stop. But finally, I don't know if it was his maturity or I found the harness that he loved. He stopped chewing. I went to a different harness at some point and he just stopped chewing it. But it was always a battle. Again, he was one of my most active Huskies, and he was one of the most prey-driven Huskies. So when we would stop on our adventures to do a watering or to give the dogs a rest, he was like 2 minutes and he's like started started just doing one of his Huskies' voices, talking to me like, "Dad, let's go." And then if I didn't respond or we didn't go, he was chewing his harness. When we were on the trail running, he wasn't chewing the harness. So it's crazy. That was Chase. Thank you for reminding me of that. And we've got from Lanier here. I think I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. What is the weight on the average that your dogs are pulling? Great question. Thank you so much for asking. So actually, dogs, usually almost any dog really, has the capability, we say, to pull 3 times its own weight. So you got a 50-pound dog, comfortably can pull 150 pounds. Now, that being said, keep in mind, they're not pulling any weight with me when I'm using the motor. So I have the ability to use the motor. That's why I call this dog moto sports. On some of the rigs, they can propel. Remember, I call it pushing, but either way, they're propelling it. So I've guesstimated all my equipment on the one of my main rigs that they're pushing to be around 400 pounds. So that would mean with 4 dogs, they're capable of 600 pounds. So it's a little more than half, 2/3 of the weight that they're capable of pulling. Most dogs, as they get in shape, and pulling dogs can pull more than 3 times. But even at that 3 time, we call it by rule of thumb. That's why I probably pulled out my thumb. About 3 times their body weight. So even by that scale, 600 pounds, we're at 400. And that's why they can repel us. But a lot goes into that. As soon as we get on a hill, it gets so much more challenging for them to pull. And when the incline goes up, how much can they really pull? Usually that's why the musher will be on the back of the sled, even when he's got a 11 dog team, whatever dog team, and the dogs need help getting pulling, he'll get off the sled and start kicking. So my motor does what the musher does without me getting out of the sled. You might say, find the hardest job, which is running Huskies. That's one of the hardest jobs. We're actually entertaining Huskies, and give take the hardest job running Huskies or having Huskies. Find the laziest man. Some might say that's me. He'll find the easiest way to do it. So that's where the development of dog motorsports came from. Thank you for the question. It's actually all of this is a labor of love sometimes, because no matter what you're doing, you're working with the dogs to get them harnessed up, to get them in position, to navigate. Even though I'm using my electric motor on dog motorsports, it still takes a lot. And in my case, all the traveling we do, it takes a village. It takes my co-pilot, my wingman, and possibly some other assistants, depending on if we're going through cities, trying to really have some fun and do some different stuff. I need a team, and that's why I've got the Wolf Driver Pit Crew. So I've been going on here for almost 80 minutes, so it's a long time. I wanted to really touch on the dog mush CrossFit. You saw we had some really good questions today. I appreciate that from everybody. And I appreciate all the support, all the shout outs, and all the Cheryl, all the reminiscing about old times. So I love that. And you can see everybody knows I've been around for a long time doing this. So what you hear from me is the gospel for the most part. I always say, check with a veterinarian, check with other professionals that are, went to school to learn this stuff. I'm out in the field doing it. But medical aspects are really important, so you can get the best of all worlds, tuning into me and talking to the pros, especially anything that involves physical fitness. Before you start anything with the dog, just like with yourself, it's always good to check with the doctor, with the pro, etc. I really appreciate the question also about spraying their pads, because I did not mention that. And that's one of the aspects I've never seen anybody do. It's worked well for me. I've done it for years. I actually did with my earlier Huskies. They have something called a paw plunger, and there's other companies that make them now, where they take the pads, the paws, and they dip them into the plunger, what they call into a big cup. And that was usually to clean the mud off of it. But I would do it to cool the dogs, because I knew they emitted their heat from there. They sweat it from there. So that was submersing them. The problem with that is you keep burning up a whole cup of, because it would go up their pads, keep burning up a whole cup of water, you're going to run out of water on the trail. And that's why I started the spraying process, where we could do a shallow layer of water to get those pads submersed and to keep them cool that way without wasting too much water. Because when we get out on the trail, we can only carry so much. Sometimes we can refuel with water down by a river if we had it to do that. For some people with one dog, the paw plungers might be a great solution. But we've been going for almost 80 minutes now, and the dog Mush CrossFit, again, is a new system I developed to explain to everybody how to use different concepts, different ideas, and people can take from that and create their own or work them in other ways. But there are really good resources in there to give people ideas to go. And also, I didn't list equipment. I hope to do that, like the weight vest I use and stuff like that. I'm going to keep going here. So this is from Connor McCurry. He's training for the Iditarod. So that's funny. I'll touch on that real quick. I never want to do the Iditarod. I'm friends of a friend of somebody that did the Iditarod, and they did it twice. The first time they did it, the dogs fought so bad, some of the dogs on the team, because that'll happen, and they got in the middle of it. They got so scarred up, basically, so cut up. He had to take his dogs out of it, and he had to try it another year. The next year he did complete it. So it's not nothing I aspire to do. It's funny. I've never aspired to run dogs on a large team like that. I've done it before as more as a tourist, been on a sled dog expedition, but I've never aspired to do a large team. It's really grueling. It's a lot of work. And like I said, it's just, laziest man, going back to that. I've never aspired to do that. I'm in awe of the dogs and the people that do that. There's a lot of people that do it, and it's incredible. I shouldn't say a lot of people. It's actually a handful. It's not that popular as you'd think. But people get a bad name for it, again, just going back to sled dog treatment and to how they do some of this stuff. And it's wrong, because it's not wrong to do it, but it's wrong these people got a bad name because it only comes from a few bad seeds, like I've mentioned. A lot of these people that do this love their dogs, love the passion of what's going on, and they pretty much give their life to do it. I mean, it's a commitment. What I do is a commitment for the life of the dogs. But these people are doing this for a more, how can I say it? Just a more grueling commitment. I mean, you're talking extreme conditions that I don't know if I could survive, and for lengths of time that I definitely couldn't survive. So in that capacity, I wouldn't make it. But that's why I developed Dog Motorsports, because it's a whole system that lets people have huskies and high energy breeds without having to be a full-time musher. So we got another one. This might be a marathon podcast here. So that was the last one. Okay, so just for my producer's sake and my sake, we're going to sign off here. But it's been interesting. When I stop here, actually, you can read some of I go through social media sometimes on the trails, because I want to make sure I'm addressing everybody, because people come in, well, like, is this bad for the dog, whatever, and they don't know what's going on. And before they get away, I want to set the record straight, because I want them to know how healthy what I'm doing is for the dog and how much they need it, so they can understand that. And again, if they're thinking about getting one of the high energy breed, one of these breeds, I want them to know proper treatment so they can reevaluate, make sure it's the right dog for them. Hopefully it'll help curb some of that abandonment and some of that too much surrendering that happens with these dogs. So I'm Wolf Driver. Marathon VodCast today. Really appreciate you tuning in. I hope I covered everything. If I didn't, you can always comment on any of my social media posts, and I will almost always get to it. Sometimes it's been a real busy season. I'm running the dogs as late, giving them vigorous exercise as late of this year as I can, because it's been cool the past a little bit. There's been some warm days weaved in there, but like today I think it's in the 30s. So that's how we do it here in Wolf Driver Land. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope everyone has a great day.